Please welcome the people.
Welcome them. How do I welcome them?
Okay, thank you, Jesus. Let your name be glorified. Amen. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Welcome
Ish.
to
This.
Marriage on a Mission. Yeah, we've had 2 wonderful episodes that we believe have been a blessing to people, and we're going to have today's episode, which is on depression.
Right.
And whether a Christian can be depressed. And then we'll link it to my experience. I've been depressed before, for a longer time.
You have?
Yeah.
Wow.
Depressed and gone through some panic attacks from the experiences I had recently. So we're going to look at that from God's perspective or Bible perspective, whether a Christian can be depressed, and if so, how can a Christian come out of depression?
Right.
So today's is going to be, and it's something that I believe will affect a lot of people positively, because there are people who are depressed and are not talking about it. Yeah.
We'll get into the why.
Yeah.
Why especially the Christian community doesn't talk about
That's right.
this that much. But before we do that, I think we should give a disclaimer that we are not medical experts on this subject.
No.
Because there is also the medical side of this condition. So we are not. So please consult your doctor.
On this. We are just talking about it from the Christian perspective, and also because I have
Your
actually
experience.
been a victim of depression. So we're talking about my experience and what we have learned through it, because my wife was there, at the time she wasn't my wife. We're dating, and the experiences I went through, and the spiritual side, the physical side, so more practical experience without proffering any medical solutions, just sharing my experiences from God's perspective, and also what we have learned from the experience I had.
So first of all, what is depression? So there are definitions from authentic sources. So let me read one definition from the American Psychiatry Association, APA. It says depression is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. But they also mention that it's treatable, and it causes feelings of sadness, losing interest in activities that you once enjoyed, losing passion in life, and it can lead to emotional and physical problems.
That's right.
Yes, and affect your ability to function, basically. So from this is like one may have been depressed before. Without knowing.
No, a lot of people have gone through depression. And if you go through depression without knowing and you come out, God has helped you. But it's also because there are levels of depression. There are very acute depressions. Which some of us experience. Which I experienced. The level I went to was very acute. And it all stemmed from the loss of my late wife, which we have spoken about in our last 2 episodes, right? So that's the authentic, let's say more academic definition of depression. But if I'm looking at it from the experience I had, and it doesn't deviate from what the APA says, I think that depression is the after effects of any traumatic experience you have. The after effects, because there are causes of the depression. Some things happen that lead to the depression. So I just formulated my own definition from the experiences I had. That depression is after effect from a traumatic experience, and from when I had it, I had to be reading the book that you recommended.
First of all, we didn't even know it was depression.
We didn't know. It went on for a long time, and then I don't know why you bought the book for me, but I think
also don't know why.
No, I think as I frequently went to the hospital, and there was
nothing physically
wrong or medically wrong with me. They ran many tests on me, Several times, there were times when in a week I'll be detained like 3 times in the hospital. They didn't understand what was happening to me, and I couldn't sleep, so they would just give me injection. I'll sleep for the whole day, and the evening they will discharge me. And another time I'll go within a week. So I think the doctor looked at me and listened to my story. So what's your story? So when he listened to me and said, "Sir, you are depressed. From what you've told me, there is a medical condition that you are going through." And he is a very senior physician, said that, look, we always look at the body medically without looking at the brain, and it's one of the biggest parts of our well-being. So he recommended that I see a clinical psychologist at the time. So that's when we realized that I may be dealing with some very serious issues. Of course, we also got to know that, because you remember there was a time when I didn't understand what's all this experience. Immediately I prayed out of desperation. I said, God, what's happening to me? As I closed my eye, because I'm a Christian and I'm a pastor, and by God's grace my eyes are opened. So immediately I asked that question, and then I went off a little bit, and I saw that black dogs were chasing me, and God spoke to me in that vision and said, when these dogs are chasing you, you can feel normal. Then I realized that I was dealing with something bigger than I thought.
Right. And that's also confirms that there is a spiritual side.
Yes, definitely in depression.
Right.
Yeah.
But
we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about
the spiritual side.
Okay. So I looked up some symptoms.
Yeah.
Just so that we are doing this so that we have like a background to have the conversation on. So some symptoms will be feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest in activities, change in your appetite, losing weight, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, feeling fatigued, feeling purposeless, feeling worthless or guilty, and then having difficulty in making decisions or concentrating. And then the last one was thoughts of death or suicide, which is like a very extreme
on the extreme end of it. But you see that if you read about depression and some of the symptoms you've given or the effects, you see that some are positive, negative, some are this and that, so it depends on the person and the level of depression the person is going through. And so for some people, they will sleep a lot after the depression. Others will not sleep at all, cannot sleep. Mine, I couldn't sleep, The longest time I would sleep would be like 20 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. Because then there's that... Immediately I close my eyes, the fear and panic comes, and so then after 5 minutes I'll wake up, or I'm not able to close my eyes. Sometimes you will tell me, just close your eyes and lie down, and it wasn't that simple act of closing your eyes and lying down was not simple for me, because immediately I close my eyes, panics would come. So then I have to resort to medication to sleep. That kind of thing. So for some people they can't sleep, others will be able to sleep. I went through the other appetite problems. I couldn't eat at all.
Some people can eat.
They will overeat. I couldn't eat at all. So to stay healthy, I'll have to force myself and eat. And so if they put the food before me, I have to force myself. There was no appetite. I have to just eat before I feel I don't want to eat again. It was a terrible sickness. And I'm a good eater. I eat.
Wow.
When I'm not fasting, I really eat. And so it was strange that I couldn't eat, and I was eating just to stay strong. There was no appetite, and there were times when they'll put food before you and you're crying. And I'm just expanding the effects from the practical point of view. You will be crying without any reason, depending on the depression you have. So I think I want to go back again and say that. So there are various types. We can't exhaust the types and what causes depression. For me, it was the loss of my late wife, a loss of a friend, somebody who was dear to me, closer, and also I think not just the loss of my late wife, but losing my children to a people who didn't have any feeling at all for you for what you've gone through, and even for the children, because they've lost. So that's prayer I've been praying. So see how callous some human beings can be, like the children who have lost their mother, okay, and then they can't see their father. You've lost your closest friend, and now you took your children to people you thought were family, and then afterwards, now they block you. You can't see. Now you don't even know where they live. They've taken your child away. So that was also another effect, So, and that was my worldview, my late wife and my children, and so my world was shattered. And for some people, it will be loss of money, like those who have lost their money to investments.
To haircuts.
Yeah, the haircut is one thing that it can kill. It can lead to acute depression. I remember when some of the banks were collapsed, some people, the first wave, I was a pastor, pastoring a church. People came to me, prayed for me to recover my money. By God's grace, I warned people that it was going to happen. If you remember, I prophesied about it. Yes, that it was going to happen.
About the financial sector being hit.
Should manage. And for some people, I told my particular banks. And those who listened with joy. That's when, I was actively in pastoral ministry. But some people passed. Some also went into serious depression. And for some people, it's a loss of a relationship, somebody you love so much. You think you're dating. A young lady came to me when I was pastoring a church I was pastoring before, and she had dated this guy for several years, maybe 7 years, and they had prepared. And we were going to marry. And on the day of the marriage, the guy just, so that is enough to destroy a woman, and it had happened to her twice. That was the second time,
Wow.
Yes, so that can break, and like she can't trust people anymore. She can't see hope. When you're talking hope, she thinks you're lying to her, And for some people, it's not relationship. Some people is
some can be postpartum depression.
Postpartum depression, and that's what many men don't know.
A big one, yeah.
Many men don't know. For you men who refuse to be exposed,
collect your blasters.
Read about it. Women go to be delivered of a baby to go to the ward and give birth for your son or your daughter. And then they just slip into depression. And the men will say, and I won't know, but one case that I was dealing with, the gentleman said,
please collect your shade. If you see this video, you know.
Are you the only person who has given birth?
If you see, let me address the first. Please, if you see this video, you know who you are. Whoever is talking to, please collect your shade.
How could you say that to a woman? You don't know what they go through
your wife.
to give birth, and that's a problem. And the woman, she lost her hair. For some people, they go into deep depression and they don't want to see their babies. Some turn on their babies. They want to beat them. They want to be aggressive. It's not because they hate them. They've been depressed. There's one particular woman in a church that we have attended before. She actually goes off like mentally.
Yeah,
you seen that woman?
You told me.
I saw her in church, and then I went to Accra market too. I was going to buy some batteries for you, I think, like that. And then I saw her in the market, like as if it was a mad woman. And I saw her back in the church, and I asked people, so that's what happens. Anytime she gives birth, she goes into that state. So
that's
please.
Wild.
So there are many, many causes of depression. For some people is maybe failing an exam a number of times. Many causes, others to
a failed
marriage. Divorce is a common cause of depressions. And so when somebody goes through divorce, a friend of ours, through another shade, a friend of ours recently got married again. She had been divorced for how many years now?
About 6 years.
6 years. And she has been dealing with things people don't know, and I think that she divorced. The man just ran away and ran out and fooling around with women. And she remember. I remember that you brought her to church those days. She wanted her marriage corrected. Like the man had run off, but she wanted me to pray as a deliverance minister for her to get a marriage back, and it didn't happen. Now God has helped her. Now she's got somebody else to marry, and the Christian community are criticizing her for marrying again. You know what? Don't hide your sins. And magnify the other people's. And she hasn't sinned. The man was fooling around with women. In fact, for me, she had the reason to divorce or even to go get married at the time. But she still wanted to come back. until it was not possible. So I'm just saying that there are many causes of depression. And something that you may trivialize as not a problem could be a reason why somebody can be depressed. Yeah.
Wow. So when we were trying to figure out what was going on with you and just trying to, go through the grieving process, that's when I found this book.
Yeah.
And I just had to read a lot online, read a lot of reviews on a Christian perspective of depression. And then I found this amazing resource, If I'm a Christian, Why Am I Depressed?
If I'm a Christian, Why Am I Depressed?
Yes, by Robert Somerville.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing to us.
Big blessing to us.
I personally learned a lot myself because I think I hadn't come into close contact with someone who's been depressed before. And it's something we don't even talk about. So even if I was depressed, I wouldn't know. It's later as I was reading that, it's like I've been depressed before. When I was younger, when I lost my mother, I think I went through like a period of being depressed because I didn't know how to.
That if they lose their parents.
Yes, how to deal with the loss.
And they're not giving counsel, some counseling.
Right. So we've also had to find some good resources, and we recommend that you find some biblical resources to help you through if you sense that you're having some bouts of depression. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Can a Christian be depressed?
Yes, a Christian can be depressed. And yes, a Christian can be depressed.
I didn't knew.
It's just like asking, can a Christian fall sick?
Yeah.
A Christian can fall sick. I'll be bringing my experience, and then also from Bible perspective and all of that.
Right.
A Christian can be depressed. I'm a Christian, a pastor, and even though opportunistic demons and powers took advantage of my loss, which we'll talk about, the spiritual side of depression,
right?
And then brought me under some kind of oppression that led to the depression. The time that we actually saw the deepest manifestations of the depression was when we had just finished or about finishing 70 days of fasting. So I was in deep spiritual exercise. It was 6 months after the loss of or more than 6 months, and we had started fasting more than 6 months, almost 8 months or 9 months. So I was trying to come back into ministry because I didn't want to be lazying around, and so we started 70 days, and we were on fire and all of that. And in November, that's when mine started. I had a dream, and I'll come to scriptures too. I had a dream, and in the dream, darkness had covered me, and I was driving because I've lived in Spintex for most of my life here, for over 20 years, I think, and darkness covered me, and I was driving in Spintex, and the light of my car had become dark, like everything was dark. The car had become dark, the color, the light, everything, the atmosphere, I couldn't see anywhere. So when I got out of the dream, immediately I got out of the dream from my bed, I was sick. I was sick. Like, it was not even a joke. I went to bed very healthy and very strong. Remember, I was fasting, and I was fasting and breaking. It wasn't like I was not eating after each day in the evening. I'll break, and I will continue. So 70 days, break in the evenings, and that's how it started. And then I started having all these bouts of depression. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I'll be crying unnecessarily, and I'll feel like my heart is failing. The first deepest manifestation was when I went into the bathroom, and I felt like I was collapsing, and Reverend Seth was here, and I screamed out of from the bathroom, and had to quickly wipe myself, and then I said she rushed me to the hospital. And as we were going to the hospital, I was having the thought that I'm not coming back. It was like the world was passing me by. I could physically feel myself going, So we were now driving against traffic, and I was honking, and we were rushing to Sakumono Hospital. That was the first hospital I went to. And when I got there, they thought I was dying. So they rushed me and everything. Then it was one doctor who said, "You're not dying. You're not dying." I said, "Please, I'm my heart, I can't breathe, you know." So I had that, and then that was what sparked it. You know, from that period, it took me months, even up till recently, you know, that I really felt that God had finally, taken me out. See, there are men in the scriptures that were depressed. It's because we read the Bible only with a spiritual sense. Now, let me give you something that will help you when you're reading the Bible. Read the Bible as a human being. There are human beings with a human face who live like us. They are not like superhumans. So when you read the Bible that way, you get to understand, have the context, understand the sense without spiritualizing everything. Look, the prophet Jeremiah was a depressed prophet. God sent him to do what he was doing, but the experiences he had, that's what they call him, the weeping prophet. Read the book of Lamentation 3. He said, the hope of prosperity, the hope of joy is gone. As he was prophesying about for God, they will arrest him. They say he's a deviant. They put him in a pit.
In a well or something.
Yeah, a well, pit. And they feed him with dry bread. And it's not his fault. God sent him. So as a human being, he was thinking, what's wrong with me? What? At the point, he didn't want to do it again. That's when the phrase fire in my bones came. He said, I will not prophesy. God will tell him to say, I won't do it. Because the more I do it, the more depressed I become.
Right.
He said, but his word was like fire in my bones. I had to speak it out.
Right.
You know, he was a depressed man. That was not just a Christian. That was a man who had God's assignment. He was a prophet. Read the book of Lamentation, you understand it. He was a depressed man, sad, crying all the time for working for God. David, now if you read the book of Psalm, you understand a man who was constantly depressed.
Right.
You know, we read, is it Psalm 45? 45, he said, my soul, why art thou cast down?
My soul.
He said, I went to church. He said, I went to the house of the Lord with people with joy, but my soul was cast down. People were happy, but I wasn't happy. You know, so you read the book of the Psalms, and you see most of his of the songs he wrote were out of depression. But then he would be depressed, but he would still hope in the Lord. You say, but hope in the Lord, and you have a solution. So David was depressed. Look, Apostle Paul was depressed in prison.
Yeah.
If you read, see, that's what I'm saying that read the scriptures with a human face. He's in prison, and he said, all men have rejected me. Nobody stood with me when I was in court, but God stood with me. He said, God will punish them. Those were words of a man who was disappointed. He said, God will punish them. I said, I've handed over Alexander, not to Satan, to afflict him. You know, that was a depressed man. That was a depressed man. And the times when he would say that we, the apostles, are exposed to demons and all of that, and you are happy and we are not happy. You know, you are rich and we are this. Those were words of a depressed man. You know, but because you read it and you think that he was superhuman, no, Paul at a point was a depressed man. And many pastors get depressed without knowing they're depressed. And that is why some fall sick and die, you know, out of ministry, and you're wondering why the pastor died. Most of these pastors get depressed.
And I think for people who carry the responsibility of leading others, is just the pressure of carrying the weight of other people's issues. When one of the chapters in the book, actually the chapter that says, if I'm a Christian, why am I depressed? Robert Somerville just encapsulates the causes of depression under 3 areas. And he was a counselor himself, dealing with people who are suicidal, until he also got depressed, and he couldn't believe that he had reached the point where he could say, I'm depressed as well. But from his years of doing counseling for people, he realized that they fall into 3 main categories. It's either the pressures of life, physical infirmities, like sickness making people depressed, or sin leading to depression. And I found, as I was, as we talk about all these causes, you find that it falls in one of these things. It's either something about life just shaking you up, like people having an accident and then they just get into depression, or something about life shaking you up, or a physical
deformity.
Yes, or sin. And when you broke down the sin part, I was like, sin how? And I realized he was saying things like fear and worry, which are not things we think. When we think about sin, we don't think about those at first. You don't think about worry or pride or fear being sin, but those things can lead to depression, and then outright sins that lead to feeling guilty, and then the guilt causes
can
depression.
Cause you to be depressed, yeah.
So it's a really multi-faceted, and for David, I think that one of the causes of his depression was his sin with Bathsheba, and then the baby dying and all of that. And that's when he was telling God not to take away his spirit from him. Yeah.
So there was the sin part for David.
Yes.
And there was also the loss of Absalom, and also the persecution from King Saul.
Mm-hmm.
So he had really multifaceted forms of depression.
Right.
The sin and the loss of somebody he loved, like his own son, and then he also being persecuted by the king, the president of that time, and he was being looked for everywhere to be killed and all of that. So Christians can be depressed, and I thank God for this research you made about the causes, the causes of depression. And one of the things that I realized I didn't talk about is this, that the constant thought of death comes to depress people. I didn't feel that I should end my life, no, but I felt that I would die. So it's one way, or it's one thing or the other. Some would want to commit suicide because they see the reason they want to commit suicide is that they don't see hope. And when you are depressed, people who go into depression, especially the acute ones, it's like you are caught in a hole of darkness that you can't explain to anybody who has not been there before. So you can't see beyond now. It's like you see, anytime you are thinking, the memories you have are all dark. Every memory that came to me was dark. So, like, positive memories were not coming to me. It was only negative memories, So so for me, it was like, if I lived one more day, it was a miracle. If I woke up and I saw the sun, I said, wow, I'm alive. It's like, so every night I thought that the next day I would die. So I mentioned, I don't know whether we mentioned in the last episode, that I would not lock my main door. I'm thinking that something would happen to me and somebody like you or somebody else would come and say, okay, then they can have access to me. So because
God forbid, Blake.
Yes, but I had a constant, because of the state I was in, so and some depression can also lead you to sin, because you are so depressed, you can't talk to people about what you're going through, and so now you begin to have secret sins to satisfy yourself, to make yourself happy, because there's no happiness.